Hello and welcome to my channel, and welcome Ori. He is being a menace right now and just has to be all over my desk, so he's probably going to be in a majority of this video. But today I am going to go through my mid-month reading stats, which I honestly didn't even think about until I kept seeing all these like mid-month or mid-year freak-out tag videos coming out. So I'm going to be answering some of those questions as well as just going over some general stats as Ori inserts himself everywhere. So the light and stuff is weird, as you can tell. Like, my lighting is above me and it's like casting some stuff over my face. It's pouring rain and thunderstorming here, so it's actually cold. It feels like the middle of winter instead of the end of June. And so we have like windows closed. It's really, really dark outside. So the lighting situation here is absolutely terrible, but I kind of have to be at my computer to do this. And for the first time, I'm going to be trying to record my screen. So we'll see if that even works. Also, I know I look terrible today. I was not planning on filming, but then I said, what the heck, I'm going with it anyway. I was really interested in doing this video because I'm actually really interested in the stats myself. I don't know, I just kind of find it slightly fascinating, and I've read a lot more books this year than last year, so it's really interesting to me. So let's see if I can even get this started. Oh god, what? Okay, well, I guess I'm recording. Alright, this actually works, so record. Yay. Alright, so I'm actually going to start by going through the stats from the website The Storygraph rather than GoodReads, because the Storygraph actually has you choose like the pacing of the book and what kind of themes are going on, and so it's broken those down, and I think that's pretty interesting. So to start with, I've read 54 books, and actually, I think, okay, yeah, GoodReads has listed that I've read 56 books, and Storygraph has 54, because I think there's a few DNFs that I didn't put into Storygraph, and so I think that's the discrepancy. And also my average rating will be different, but also it's because on Storygraph you can use like 3.25 or 3.75 as well, and like 0.5s and stuff, instead of just doing the solid numbers like you have to do on GoodReads, so those will be a bit different too. But anyway, here is my reading stats on Storygraph. Here are the moods of the books, so these are like the themes and stuff. So the top one is dark, which is not surprising in the least. 26 out of the 54 books have been dark. Then adventurous, 18 of those. Mysterious with 17. Emotional with 13, which I'm kind of surprised about. Reflective, oh wow. Then it goes tense, challenging, funny, which I don't really read many comedy books, so that makes sense. Then lighthearted, informative, hopeful, sad, and relaxing. So yeah, I obviously don't read much lighthearted stuff, and that's reflected here. But this is one thing I do enjoy about Storygraph, is how you can kind of indicate what type of book it is instead of just like with the genre. Alright, and pace is actually pretty even, so this kind of surprises me. So I've read 14 slow books, which I accidentally just clicked on. Can we not do that? 20 medium and 19 fast, so this is pretty good actually. Next is page number. So I've read 26 books that are less than 300 pages, 25 that are 300 to 499, and then 3 that are over 500, which I'm not exactly a fan of super long books normally, so this makes quite a bit of sense, but I'm actually really shocked at how many I've read that are over 300 pages. So this one's a bit depressing. I've only read one nonfiction book this year apparently, and I thought that was wrong at first, but then I realized the ones I was thinking of I actually read last year. And then my most read genres, with fantasy actually being the top one. with 22. But I mean, that kind of makes sense to me because a lot of horror books also go into the fantasy genre as well. And then horror is second, of course. We can't be without that. And YA, I'm kind of surprised, is third, but I'm glad it's only at 10 out of the 54, so that's not too bad. And then I'm surprised mystery is above thriller, but that's fine. And there's actually 6 romance, which I've tried to read some, and they're definitely not the greatest, so that's not exactly my thing. Then manga, historical, LGBTQIA+, contemporary, and then obviously classics, sports, music, memoir is all down here with 1. Not really into science fiction much either, but like the fantasy, horror, definitely in the top there. And this is another thing that I thought was kind of interesting, is this says I've read 16,258 pages this year, and that just kind of boggles my mind. Like, that just seems like so much. And then it actually separates it by the star ratings, which I kind of love. So my average on Storygraph is 3.41 stars, and I'm actually pretty shocked at how many 4 stars I have. I really didn't think I'd been rating many that high. So to see 14 there is pretty cool. But I have 1 1-star, 1 1.5, so I'm glad for that. The no ratings are probably the DNFs. We have 6 2-star, 6 2.5, 8 3, 4 3.5, 1 3.75. We have the 14 4, 4 4.5, and then 5 5 stars, which let's see what the 5 stars are. Imaginary Friend, The Good House, Small Things Like These, Revenge, 11 Dark Tales, and The Midnight Library. So nothing surprising there for me. And that's the end of the Storygraph Stats. I like the pie charts. They're interesting to me. So you can get rid of that. And this is the GoodReads page. On here, like I said, I have the 56 books read, which is probably just like the DNFs. And so this says that I have 16,474 pages read, which for me, to kind of put it into perspective, last year I only read 14 books. So for me to have read 56 books in the first 6 months of 2021 is pretty amazing, and I am pretty proud of myself actually, because I just started picking up reading in December of last year. So the shortest book I've read was a novella, and this is The Loneliest Band in France by Dylan Fisher. It was a book, and the 70 pages actually feels longer than that because it's literally like the entire page is writing. There's no punctuation or anything like that, so it's still kind of a tiny brick of a book. Longest book is no surprise, 709 pages, House of Leaves by Mark C. Danielewski. This is heavy book and is probably my favorite of the year so far. Average book length is 294 pages, which isn't surprising. I'd say that's probably, it's probably the average of the books that I read, and yeah, that's literally what it says, so I'm kind of dumb. The most popular book is The Midnight Library. That's a lot of people reading that. Least popular is no surprise. I have seen no one talk about this book, and the only reason I even knew about it is because it was on the news shelf at my library, and so like it takes place in France and stuff, so I mean it kind of makes sense that it was here. My average rating on Goodreads is 3.5, but keep in consideration you can't do half stars or anything, you can only do solid stars on here. The highest rated on Goodreads is All the Young Men by Ruth Coker Burks, and this is very well deserved. I think everyone should read this book. This is the one nonfiction book I've read so far this year, and it's pretty much her memoir of taking care of AIDS patients in the South. And this was like at the height of the AIDS crisis, and just when people were figuring out like what AIDS and HIV were. And so a lot of people's families were turning their backs on them, and they pretty much just had this woman to care for them. And so it's an incredibly sad but like a need to read story. So highly recommend this one. My first review of the year was The Good House by Tananarive Due, and this is one of my favorites of the year as well. This was also a surprising read. Definitely recommend this. And then these are just the covers of everything I've read this year, which is quite a variety, if I do say so myself, except when it comes to nonfiction, apparently. And that doesn't count because we're not at the end of the year yet. Oh. So, GoodReads doesn't have that much. So besides these stats, I also chose to answer some of the questions from the mid-year book freakout tag. I'm not going to answer all of them because some of them are like, what book made you cry? Well, I don't think any of them did. Another one asks about sequels you've read this year, and I think I've only read one sequel this entire year, so those questions kind of just really don't make sense for me. But the best book I've read so far in 2021 is definitely House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This was actually published in 2000, so freaking 21 years ago. That's amazing to me. But this one is a horror book where it is very hard to explain, but it is quite an experience to read. But essentially, it's like a book within a book within a book kind of deal, where there's a portion of it called the Davidson Record, which is about this family where the inside of their house is bigger than the outside. That's the main horror story. And then there is Zampano analyzing it, and another character on top of that analyzing it and creating their own kind of footnotes that also tell another story. And there's a lot of not just the footnotes, but appendix pieces and parts of the book where it's turn to this page and you'll find more information about stuff. And also the formatting of it is really crazy, where you'll have to turn the book around, or there's one word on one page kind of thing. And it's just such an amazing experience. And it is by far my favorite book of this year. It took me a week to read. I read it the first week of March. And I find it kind of funny because there's all these conspiracy theories with it and stuff. And people say that when you read this book, you get sick. And on the third day I was reading it, I got sick. I know it's confirmation bias kind of thing, but finding out the thing, the theory later about it was just kind of funny. And next is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. For me, that's Watch Over Me by Nina LaCour. This was just published at the end of last year, so that's why I'm considering it a new release. I just bought this book actually locally. I found out at Cultura, I think it is, they have a tiny shelf of English language books, and this was on there, so I picked it up because I've heard really good things about this from Books and Lala's channel. So it's one I've been wanting to read for a while, but my library didn't have. My most anticipated release for the second half of the year is All's Well by Mona Awad. This one is supposed to come out on August 3rd, and this is the author of Bunny, which that's kind of a controversial book in the fact that people either love it or hate it, and I rather enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty crazy book. I think everyone can agree on that. But it was super interesting, and you can interpret the ending in multiple different ways. So I think if you are looking for something that's more unique and can have multiple theories about it, then I would definitely read Bunny. And so I'm really looking forward to this other book. I also want to read her other one. I think it's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl or something like that. But my library doesn't have that one either. So All's Well is actually a book that I've had on pre-order for months, and I think it's the first book I've ever pre-ordered like this before. So I'm really looking forward to August 3rd when it comes out, because I will definitely be reading it right away. Next is Biggest Disappointment, and that is definitely The Project by Courtney Summers. I've also read Sadie by this author, and it was pretty good until the end, because we don't really find out what happens. And The Project has to do with a cult, and I find that really interesting and fascinating in how people kind of get absorbed into cults like that and just follow someone blindly. And this was disappointing on just every level. I ended up rating it 1.5 stars So I'd have to say that's probably one of the biggest disappointments of the year so far. Biggest surprise was Revenge 11 Dark Tales by Yoko Ogawa. I didn't write down when this was published, but I think it's a little bit of an older book if I'm not mistaken. It's essentially a collection of short stories by her, and they all connect somehow, and I just loved the way they all connected. I loved the way they were written. They weren't the kind of story where it's so far out there it just loses you and you're like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know how I'm supposed to understand this or build like any sort of theories or anything around it. So it's very enjoyable, and it caught me off guard because I really went into this having no expectations. I just like dark short story collections, and it's definitely something I want to reread because I know for sure that I definitely have missed some connections between the stories themselves, and I just think it would be great experience to reread it and kind of see everything that I missed the first time through. Then finally we have what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I don't have anything in particular, but I definitely like to read one or two more classics this year. It's a goal I kind of set for myself at the beginning of the year, but then I've only read like one, I think, because I've been distracted by all these other books. So I would definitely like to read at least one more this year. It's just kind of a little goal for myself. So that's about it. Reading, I just realized that since I've read over 50 books so far, I might actually hit like the 100 book mark for the end of the year. That would be really cool. I would be flabbergasted at myself because I only read 14 books last year, so that's just like, what? But we'll see. I definitely never want to feel like I'm forcing myself to read or like I have to read a certain book or anything like that. I definitely just read from what I'm interested in that moment, and it's just been an enjoyable ride. So sorry the quality of this video is a bit lower than normal, like just how the lighting is outside and the lighting in here, it does not go together at all. It's above me, so I have these stupid lines on my face, and like it's gonna be raining for like the entire week, so it's gonna be dark like pretty much all week, and so it's not gonna get better, so I didn't really have a choice. At least you get to see a cat in the background. But as always, thank you for hanging out with me as I attempted screen recording for the first time. Hopefully that turned out alright. Fingers crossed when I go into editing. But it's always appreciated to have you around. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe as well, as that helps me out a lot. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.